This is Mayor Chris Bollwage, and welcome to another edition of Our City. Residents can visit all of our social media accounts if they need any information about upcoming events here in the city of Elizabeth. Or if you simply have a question, call our public information office at 908-820-4124. And for this week's show, I'm pleased to be joined by two members of Future City. Future City has been a corporation in our city for at least 20 years. They've done great things when it comes to the environment, when it comes to historical artifacts, and presenting the history of our community. First is Ms. Carol Savona, who is a Future City Incorporated board member with the title Emeritus. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Mr. Pedro Cruz, did I say that right?
Cruz.
Mr. Pedro Cruz, who's the chairperson of Future City. Pedro, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, Pedro, you ever do the show before?
I might have supported it. I know I've accompanied Carol before, but this was many years back.
Many years.
This might be the first time.
I think so. So what got you involved in Future City, Pedro? We'll start with you. I've known Carol too long. Just kidding, Carol.
Yeah, so basically I'm a lifelong resident of Elizabeth. Went to the Upper Academy. Upon graduating, I met Michelle at a scholarship function at the Bayway Cap, and that's how I got introduced to the Future City Inc. organization. From there, started my studies at NJIT and got involved as an intern, and then little by little over the years got involved with the board roles. And now, from board member, now executing in the role of president.
Yeah, so NJIT students have been extremely popular with Future City. We've entertained some students from all different years there.
Yes,
which
definitely.
has been pretty important to not only, I think, the growth of the student, but the growth of the organization.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah.
And how'd you find your role as a student intern compared to now as chairperson?
So it basically, once I learned a little bit about the organization, I saw a lot of value in terms of, the local impact, learning about some of the uses, once you start learning the little concepts about environmental and the environmental challenges that are associated, there's a lot of things that are tied on the local level as well. So I saw a lot of value in that, and coupled with the engineering studies and the engineering mindset, that kind of pulled it in together to exercise things that might not be numerical in nature, but it's problem solving in nature at the end of the day. So I saw a lot of value in that, the challenges, learning other skills too, project management, soft skills, dealing with all sorts of, in terms of media. So there's a lot of things that we do that kind of complement, the hard, or I guess the engineering regimen.
Right. Well, Future City does too many good things for the media to ever notice. If you did something bad, they'd pick up on it in a hurry, but if you do too many good things. Future City's a great organization, not only for the city, but for the region as well. And Carol, you have a title called Emeritus now. It's an esteemed title, and does that mean you're just growing old, Carol? You've been here too long?
Probably.
How did you get that title Emeritus? Tell us what you feel about it as well.
Well, it actually means retired.
It does,
and,
yeah.
I retired just recently, about a month and a half ago, and turned the organization over to Pedro. And it's nice when there's somebody capable able to carry on.
But you taught in our system for a lot of years, too.
37 years. 37 years in the Elizabeth Public Schools.
And what was your main focus of teaching?
Science.
Science.
I was a science teacher and a science coach.
Okay.
And many good years in Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a good experience.
So who recruited you for Future City, Carol, based on your background?
My former supervisor was a member of Future City at the time, and she said, "Why don't you come to a meeting with me?"
Okay.
And that's what started it. That's probably over 20 years ago. Future City, we just celebrated, 27 years?
Yes.
I know it's over 20.
Yeah, 27 years last October.
Okay.
So,
And Pedro, you decided to confer the title on Carol, and you're pretty young, so you've known Carol's been around here for most of the 27 years.
Yeah, so I wouldn't really word it that way, that I made that executive decision, but that was a decision.
Well, you were talking about leadership and project management skills before,
Right.
so I figured you took it upon yourself.
Well, no, it was a discussion with the board, and the upper management team.
Sure.
And we just decided, we were looking, she's recently retired. She's been with the organization for many years. So it's probably a good time to transition
Yes.
some of those, duties and responsibilities, because she does a lot for the organization in terms of promoting the programs, being active. But, there's another piece behind the scenes that, takes a lot of time. And now that we have, a central nucleus of younger members of the organization that can step up and
Yes.
fill up those responsibilities, we decided, hey, let's create this new role. And we had a discussion. She accepted, and it's great because now we have somebody that's been with the organization through its many phases till now, that we can lean on in terms of perspective. Just get another opinion.
Is Michelle McBean still with the organization?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, she's
yes.
still there, right?
Oh,
Yes.
definitely.
So she was a founder.
She was
Yeah,
the founder,
yeah.
yes.
Yes.
She was the founder so many years ago.
So Pedro, can you share with our viewers what the residents in a future city are doing now?
Yeah, definitely. So our if you look at our mission statement, we're basically tied into it's learning about the environment through educational means. So all our programs are based on that basis. So we just recently completed the Environmental Week, which is a program that it's a partnership with the schools. That started out probably about 25 years ago. And when I came with the organization, it was mostly a one-day event where they're catered to 250 students on site, usually at the Peterstown Community Center.
Yeah, I've
And-
been at them. Those
Yeah.
events.
And for me, the highlight of that event is sometimes when we talk about the environment and climate change and all of these different subjects, they're kind of, especially as a younger person, younger mind, it's sometimes difficult to understand what those concepts are, but there's a great activity that we have where we basically detail what non-point source solution is. So the way we demonstrate it is we have like a working model of a piece of land, and we have different dyes that correspond to different pollutants. And these things, they try to mimic, like for our city, for example, right? You have storm drain runoffs that go into the local estuaries or the storm drains, and all these things feed into a body of water. So the activity in itself is, the kids get involved, they put like the different food coloring dyes, and that kind of shows you, okay, this is what happens when you have like an oil stain out on the driveway. When it rains, this leads eventually into a central body of water. And these things over time, like you might not see them, the impact, but on a large scale, they produce all sorts of challenges in dealing with these things. So that's one program. The other program that we have, one more point on that one. In the midst of the pandemic, we switched to a completely virtual format. So now we've expanded that to a period, instead of just having a one-day session, it's spread around 3 days. And the workshops, instead of having just, because we're limited to 250, whatever the capacity may be at the Peterstown Center, since it's more of a virtual, pretty much all the students can participate because of the online stream.
Yes.
So now we're reaching a wider audience. We're expanding the topics, and the topic for this year was pretty much a focus on, some of the dynamic changes that have happened with climate change.
Carol, tell us about this year, the specific content and the details the students and teachers participate in for this event.
Oh, it was called Our Environment, Our Challenge. And it was basically meant to give students the vocabulary or the words that they hear all the time on TV, like climate change, global warming, pollution, different things that they might hear about but don't really know what was happening with it. And it's really important that young people know about climate change and and learn how to prepare for it.
I think we also got to teach some of the elderly people about it too.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah, if you look back, I don't know, like I can remember 50 or 60 years ago here in Elizabeth, Warrenco Lake used to be frozen all year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And
You're right.
we went ice skating all the time, and there was a lot of snow in New Jersey. And now, look at last couple of winters, we're changing. So climate change is a definite thing.
I'm not complaining about the lack of snow being the mayor, I can
No,
assure
me
you
either.
that.
Me either.
But you're right. One Acre Park used to freeze over. Kids were always ice skating out there, and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, it was a whole different world here.
So recently we partnered with the Elizabeth Board of Education to conduct the 25th Environmental Week. Pedro, tell us how, and Carol, how has this program grown and evolved through the years?
Yeah, do you want to go first, or?
Carol, you want to start it? Because
Well, he kind of explained it before. We started out as an in-person workshop for about 250 students. And it was at Peterstown, and sometimes we actually held it at the waterfront, which was nice.
I remember going in the thing and actually touching some of the animals that
Oh
you
yes,
pulled out of the water.
the Army Corps went that morning and got living things out of the Arthur
Right.
Kill. And a lot of times students that live in other parts of Elizabeth didn't realize that we had this resource
Oh, yeah.
right next to
Crabs,
Elizabeth.
fish, all kinds of...
Yes, so they were really impressed with it. And then like he said, during the pandemic, we had to go virtual, which in a way...
What we did, which was encouraging, that we kept the program going.
Yeah, we kept the program going, but we were able to reach more students virtually and it became Environmental Week over 3 days.
Right.
So that's what we have now, the Environmental Week.
What's the biggest challenge besides education that faces residents in day-to-day living about climate change?
So I think, again, it's a hard science, but the way, how that evolves is, it might not be this is the engineer in me, a mechanical system where exactly, okay, this is where we're at point A or point B. Here, the timescales, they're over decades and sometimes centuries, depending on what you're looking at. So the biggest challenge is seeing where does that affect us daily, which is sometimes not so easy to comprehend. But over the years, case in point, the example of freezing lake in Warrenco, where that you speak to somebody today, they wouldn't know that reference.
They never knew it happened.
They never
Right. So over the decades, the changes are dramatic, but they build up constantly, daily, and I guess if you want to even exaggerate the point, hourly. So for that, what you have to understand is that we're dealing with a big system. There's local impacts, but there's also, that's mainly driven by the atmosphere, the water systems, and these are all connected. They might move over a decade or over a century by I think if don't quote me on this, but if we're looking at the average temperature, the change over a century might be a degree. But that degree, that level of energy that we're introducing into the system produces certain outcomes. And these are the challenges that we're dealing with. So last year, a case in point, we had situations, or even this winter, you look at California, the phenomenon with atmospheric rivers, you have these wild storms that come in. So for example, a tropical storm today versus a tropical storm 10 years ago, those storms, the amount of force that they come with, we're grading them, or we're comparing them towards a hurricane. So
Well, 3 years ago, a lot of people lost their home here in Elizabeth.
Yeah.
right, and that was a tropical storm. So now we have to think, all right, well, it's here. How do we deal with that challenge? What does that mean in terms of, do those areas that got flooded out, does that mean that those areas are always going to be considered a flooding
Yeah.
risk?
It might happen
Or-
again in 50 years, but you never know, right?
Right.
So based on those thoughts, you're encouraging residents and students to use the weather app.
Yes.
Why are you? What are the benefits and why are you doing that?
So it's just to be informed. One of the things with climate change, especially now, and the changing weather patterns, the summers are harder, they're longer. The heat, phenomenon that might be more, a more typical phenomenon in the Southwest, a heat spell. Here, we're hearing that more often now in the weather reports. So now for us, it's not only an education tool, but also it's an informed decision-making tool for your day and day. And it just gets us into the rhythm of knowing, all right, well, maybe this might be an avenue to, reinforce that concept that, hey, maybe a conversation starter.
How do we keep the culture of your conversation going through the city and the school district? How do we keep it going to more and more folks?
So I would say definitely visit us we have a YouTube channel up on YouTube. Go to Future City Inc. We definitely have all the records of our past events. I would encourage residents and whoever is interested to visit our website, engage with us on our social media, and if you have any other questions, you could reach out to us on our contact page.
And where are the offices actually located?
They're actually not too far away from City Hall, 1045 East Jersey. We're located, we actually operate out of two historical properties, one being the Bunnell House, and right across the street, Belcher Ogden. So these are living, breathing pieces of history that we actively use every day.
So I want to thank the two of you for joining me on the show today. I appreciate it, Carol, and you keep coming back all the time. So
You're welcome.
And then Pedro, thank you very much for doing this as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
I want to thank Mr. Pedro Cruz and Miss Carol Savona from Future City in joining me talking about not only our community, but the climate change and the future of our country and how residents go forth in dealing with the most important issue of climate change. Stay with us again when we'll be back next week with another edition of Our City.